Sir Keir Starmer has launched a Downing Street reshuffle.
It's a mini reshuffle, I think, very small. Yeah.
A tiny reshuffle.
Yeah.
Moving Darren Jones from the Treasury to the Cabinet Office as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, which is a new role that's been created by Number 10.
So critics are already speculating why the PM has chosen to move the Labour MP from the Treasury. Apparently his job is to enforce the Prime Minister's priorities. What are his priorities?
Well, maybe someone who can tell us is Chris Hope, who's our political editor. Chris, an interesting move here. What does this say about, as Andrew has just said, the Prime Minister's political priorities?
Well, it's a response, Miriam and Andrew, isn't it, to the party's dreadful position in the polls. 20 points against Reform UK on 35 points, just 3 points ahead of the Tory party. And they're, of course, being condemned, some would say rightly so, for 14 years in government when they failed to do much on migration and the economy's barely budged. That's why you're seeing Nigel Farage benefit, and that's why we're seeing what they're calling a rewiring of this government. Now, the names aren't that well known to viewers, but the best known is probably Darren Jones. Now, he was formerly the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He was in the news a few months ago by saying he saw women and children on small boats arriving here. He then rode back from that position slightly, I think, later that day. That was a bit of a drama on the BBC Question Time. He's now the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Now, the issue here, I think, is that sounds a bit like a Deputy Prime Minister, but of course that role is held by Angela Rayner. So how that relationship plays out is fascinating. This Chief Secretary of the PM role is a new job, a new Cabinet job. It's going to be based in the Cabinet Office, working directly to the Prime Minister. Where does that leave Angela Rayner? That is a question unanswered at the moment. James Murray, he's bumped up one to be the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and Dan Tomlinson, who was well known to viewers as a kind of red wall Labour MP, he becomes the number 4 in the Treasury, the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. Also, there's Baroness Shafiq. She's now also a minister and also the Chief Economic Advisor. And behind the scenes, a guy called Tim Allen, who Andrew will know well from the old days of the Blair government. He's back in as a senior role in communications to try and refocus this government. And they're saying to us in quite language which, you know, you might raise eyebrows about. They're saying this restructure marks a turbocharging of Keir Starmer's next phase of government. They say it's their next step in its Whitehall rewiring. Number 10 is evolving at the centre as a command and control function. Behind that black door, a command and control function. These new structures and the new minister will get an increasing government grip and focus on how Whitehall operates. And we go back, don't we, to that criticism by that guy again, Dominic Cummings, who was, of course, Chief Advisor to Boris Johnson. He said, this system around me is broken, this Whitehall system, where it looks here like the Labour government is now almost agreeing with that and wants to rewire it and make it better.
But what I think really is, what is this government doing? What are its big policy initiatives? Votes for 16-year-olds? Well, that's not going to get them talking big time in the dog and duck. What else are they doing? You know, the economy is flatlining. There's no economic growth. We're going to have a budget in the autumn, which is going to be very, very unpopular. We're talking to Kemi Badenoch in a moment. Chris, she's going to warn that Labour are planning to put capital gains tax on house sales. So it wouldn't matter how they rewire the Downing Street machine. If they're not doing things which are popular and which the country needs, it's going to make no difference to their poll ratings.
And that's right. I think those remarks by Darren Jones about playing down the issue of the small boats crisis will be a problem for him. I think you've got a guy there who's now going to deliver the PM's agenda across Whitehall and doesn't really say, by his own comments there, it's a big issue. We know how big that small boats crisis is. We're looking at probably 50,000 crossings this year, a record, 29,000 already crossed so far this year. Number 10 says they want to refocus on what they say are the country's priorities, Andrew, to answer your question. That is growth that people feel in their pockets, secure borders and getting the NHS back on its feet. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. But the issue of secure borders, I've been seeing reporting over the weekend that it's time that the PM actually did almost a daily meeting on small boats and to made much more of an effort to try and control those crossings across our southern shores.
Chris, you mentioned Dominic Cummings and his reflections that Whitehall is far too powerful, and he's also said that number 10 is not powerful enough, and it seems to me that this is exactly what the Prime Minister is trying to do now, to beef up number 10. Now, do you think there's an element of, yes, of course, the Labour Party's critics will say that it doesn't have a vision, it's not managing the economy or immigration competently, but isn't it also true that it's become incredibly difficult to get anything done in the British government now, and Labour are struggling just as much as the Conservatives did?
It seems that way. I mean, the PM is recognising in the second year of his time in office he needs to get a tighter grip on this function. But I've been around politics for 30 years, as you both have. I mean, I remember when they were trying to create a kind of hub and spoke command and control operation under Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister. Before that, the policy unit was brought in by Tony Blair to increase that's a grip on government. There's that problem, I think, that it seems that Whitehall officials just go slow when they want to and speed up when they want to, and it's trying to make sure that you can force the system to do more and deliver on the priorities. And of course, the one at the moment right now is the issue of immigration, both legal and illegal migration, and also dealing with the NHS. And of course, we are focusing already, aren't we, about the issues of this budget, probably to be announced this week. Probably second week of November, I expect, because it needs 10 weeks for the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, to check those figures. Darren Jones, though, of course, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, he'll have his own views on tax and spend, and also, of course, against maybe what Rachel Reeves wants. So we are creating more bosses of this government, and with that may become more tensions.
I was to say, and on that point, just finally, Chris, more tensions, as you've already said, because as soon as I read the title, I thought, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. Isn't that what the Deputy Prime Minister's role is? Now, the Deputy Prime Minister is in a lot of political difficulties over the purchase of her flat in Hogue. This appointment is going to cause even more tension with her and her department. Maybe that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. Of course, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, she's the only person elected to that role by party members. She can't be moved from being Deputy Leader, so you can't really demote her from being Deputy Prime Minister. But yeah, all sorts of question marks about how this will play out. Will there be tensions? Will it look like he's being sidelined from making key choices? Darren Jones is the new golden boy of this Labour government. He's the rising star. He is now, I'm sure, jumping in the polls as a future successor to Keir Starmer, way over other people, and that's why in all the politics the knives might be out for him and what he's been saying in the past. That's why his role is so important. I mean, when you see the Deputy Prime Minister giving PMQs, what's Darren Jones thinking? What's he up to? So I think there's lots of areas here. And just finally, by the way, I'm fascinated by the fact that he has been appointed to the Cabinet, 2 new roles to the Cabinet. Normally those roles in the Cabinet are limited by the Cabinet manual that we have that runs government in this country. I wonder if someone else has been bumped out of Cabinet to allow Darren Jones in there as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister.
And just finally, Chris, of course, these rumours are now starting to circulate about whether Sir Keir Starmer's premiership can survive the Parliament, which is quite extraordinary. We are very clear about the Conservatives' mechanisms for getting rid of leaders. They've done it enough. What is the mechanism through which Labour MPs could change leader?
From memory, it's around 20% of MPs, of Labour MPs, must sign some letters of no confidence or express a requirement to change leader. That's around 70 or 80 MPs to make that happen. We're a long way short of that. And I think any talk of this government not lasting the course is a bit silly because of the scale of their majority, 170. The problem they've got is they are facing the hard deadline of that election by 2029. And looking at those numbers that they're polling last week, putting Reform UK in the mid-30s, that is well over what they need for a landslide. Once you get that high in the polls over your rivals, the whole system switches and you get a very big but a shallow landslide, as we saw with Labour last July. And that could happen to Reform unless this government behind me, frankly, gets its act together.
Fascinating. All right, Chris, that's Chris Hope, our GB News political editor.